Welcome, Drink with James, episode 22. Episode 122. Imagine if it was episode 22.
I can cut back to that, actually.
Yeah, Tim will cut back to it. I wonder what that looked like. I probably had a beard, not a mustache. Drink with James, episode 22. Exciting news is that next week, after this one, we're going to have some guests, one, maybe two guests. So it's not just going to be me, but we're going to be talking to. Hello, hi. I'm in the office for a total of 4 hours this week. I was in Miami speaking at a Four Seasons conference, which was as chic as you think it would be. And now I'm going on vacation to Prague, where obviously I'm staying in a Four Seasons as well. So I had a brief stint here in the office. It is around noon on Wednesday, but I'm drinking this whiskey for you guys. That's something I'm doing for you, so you're welcome. What do I want to talk about? Lots happened. We announced the finalists for the freshman class. If you haven't seen it, Tim will put up a link. 85 people, fucking amazing, every one of them. It was heartbreaking having to cut it down to even 85. I don't know how we're going to get it to 10, but we will be announcing the 10 later in November. But please go to the page, check out all the finalists. Really, every single one of them is amazing, and we could have made the finalist page 200, 300, 400 people, and they would have all been amazing. So if you applied and you didn't make the finalists, I just want to thank you for putting yourself out there. I want to thank you for asking your audience for testimonials. I know it's hard to put yourself out there in that way and say, I want something, and then not to get it. But I want you to know we read every one of the applications. We read every one of the testimonials multiple times. We took a lot of care and consideration to get down there, and just because you didn't make it doesn't mean you weren't good. It just meant that we had so many more applicants, qualified applicants, than we had spaces for them. So thank you again. This is not the last time we'll do this, so you can always try again next time. We're also working on the Influence the Election stuff. I don't know if you've seen that. It's something we talked about a bit. This is our kind of side hustle passion project that we are doing to try and get people talking about the election, talking about voting. So far we are projected to reach 46 million people when I'm recording this. I imagine it will be quite a bit higher by the time you guys are watching this. If you haven't pledged yet, go to influencetheelection.org. It takes 10 seconds to do it. We send you fun custom Insta stories that make it easy for you to talk about voting, easy for you to encourage your audience to talk about voting. This is one of the most important elections of our lives. So my expectation is that each and every one of you are going to vote. My expectation is that you should be speaking to your audience about it. And what Influence the Election does is gives you a way to get your audience to talk about it as well. So it's not just about you speaking to your audience, it's about encouraging your audience to speak to their audience to speak to that audience. And the network effect from that is much larger than any one person's influence. So if you haven't done that, please check it out. Super important. Don't be on the wrong side of history, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So, question number one, how much time in the day do I have to spend engaging with other accounts to help my own engagement? I don't remember who I spoke to. There's some influencer I talked to recently who was saying that, you know, this year they went back to engaging with their audience instead of going out and doing a bunch of random engagement with people. And that's been really helpful. We talk about follower retention a good amount. It is probably one of the most ignored numbers in the space. How do you keep the followers you already have? A good way to do that is by engaging with them, answering your DMs, answering your comments, going into your followers' accounts, liking, engaging, things like that. How much time? I don't know. You know, I think there's very successful influencers out there that spend no time, and there's people that are very disciplined about it. Like everything we talk about on this show, my advice to you would be to track it and test it. All of this stuff is you can build experiments for all of this stuff. You can say, I'm going to engage 1 hour a day, every day for the next 7 days. I'm going to write down at the end of the day how many followers I gained, how many I lost, etc., my engagement rates. And then the next week, I'm going to do 2 hours, and the week after that, I'm going to do 3 hours. And then you're going to have 3 sets of data. You can look at growth rates, you can look at engagement rates, and you can say, is it worth me spending 3 hours a day to get an extra 100 followers a week? I get 50 new followers a week when I do an hour, and 100 when I do 3 hours. So that's a choice you can actually make instead of saying, I don't know what to do. You might find that engaging for 3 hours doesn't get you anything. You might find it gets you 4 times as many followers. So you have to test, experiment, track it, build very simple spreadsheets, be disciplined. You only have to be disciplined in that way for a few weeks as you're running your experiments. But then you have to go back and test those experiments every 6 months or so to see if it's still working. The platform changes constantly, so the things you did 6 months ago to grow likely don't work today. So test, track. There's this kind of piece of advice in the business world that's generally like, you know, what is it? It's like we improve what we track. It's something like that. That like if you are tracking things and if you're taking down data and running experiments, you will get better in those places. If you don't track it, it gives you a way to ignore it and just kind of say, oh, this isn't happening, and avoid the problem. So track it, test it, let me know how it goes. I think you could test it for a week. You know, I think that would give you good enough data. The nice thing about Instagram is because the scale is so big now, the volume's so high, like a week will give you a pretty good idea. Now, what you want to do with that as well is you want to build a model that allows you to extrapolate the results out over a year. So when you build your model, if you say, okay, right now I engage 0 hours a day. I'm going to engage 1 hour a day. And let's say your growth rate today is 1%. And when you engage an hour a day for that week, your growth rate went to 1.3%, 1.4%. What is interesting there is when you extrapolate that out over the course of an entire year. Like compound interest in in the financial world, little changes, especially if your following is over 50 or 100K, little changes in percentages have huge impacts over the course of a year. So you want to make sure you build something that can extrapolate that out and let you see where am I going to be in a year, so you can make those decisions. Question number 2, what's the future of influencer marketing and what challenges will it face? Good question. I was just on a panel this week, something like this came up, and one of the panelists was saying how, they're a content creator and they're passionate about what they do and all this stuff, and they were kind of going on and on about this, which is all true. But it came to me, and I don't remember exactly what the question was, but I kind of jumped in and I was like, the second you take money, you're an advertiser. You're not a content creator anymore. Your job is to fucking sell product, move product. And I think that shift is going to be a big part of the shift in the influencer space in the coming year, is that there's going to be billions of dollars spent next year in influencer marketing. The stakes get a lot higher. This stuff needs to work better. Part of the reason I don't think it works well is I think a lot of brands don't understand how to do it effectively. I think a lot of influencers aren't doing a great job driving value. I think a lot of influencer pricing is inflated. I think there's going to be a big shift away from follower counts to reach and impressions numbers. That's something we are already doing with verified reach and other things. So that's going to be a fairly seismic change in the industry. And I think those influencers that can actually drive real quantifiable value and action for a brand are going to be the ones that continue to stand out. Continue to be a separation between audience and influence. I think something we're seeing is that a lot of people have built followings off of like a cult of personality, that they're just big personalities. And some people are really good at taking a really interesting personality or life and being able to drive action from that. I'd say like, look at like a Chrissy Teigen, right? She's just like a huge personality, and like people love her so much that they will listen to her and they'll buy the things that she buys, and she is very influential. A lot of people don't have that ability to take to bridge the gap between personality and purchase, but that gap is really important. So I think that influencers have to get better. You have to understand the value that you're driving for brands more effectively. You have to understand that this is business. This isn't a game. This isn't just, just because you have a following doesn't mean you deserve to be paid. You need to actually drive value. When we take brands' money, there's expectations. If we don't meet those expectations, well, that never happens. We always exceed the expectations. But in a world where we didn't meet a brand's expectations, that's a breach of contract. We don't get our money. There needs to be more accountability in the influencer space, and there's only so much pressure we can put in from the outside, from brands, agencies, platforms, things like that. We'll continue to put pressure on the influencer space to get better, to evolve, to grow, to improve, but that pressure also has to come from the inside, and influencers have to take up they have to take up some of the slack and say that, like, we need to do better. It is a very competitive world out there for advertising dollars. And if there is a recession, God forbid, this world is going to be a lot different. Because if we can't prove it works and there's a recession, everyone's fucked. Because the first thing they're going to cut is the budget that they can't prove is effective. And that is going to be influencers probably. So everyone needs to buck up and do a better job driving value, or we're all going to be in a very difficult place if the economy ever dips. So please don't make me give up my Tom Brown and Drake's. Don't make me give up being able to go on vacations because the industry falls away from us because we couldn't prove that it was effective. We all need to push a little harder. Question number 3, how do you recommend staying grounded in reality while continuing to influence? It's a good question. I hate trolls. I hate, people that just spew vitriol on the internet, but I do read Gomi sometimes. For those of you who don't know what that is, get off my internets. They have a forum where a lot of top influencers have pages, and they are vile, and I think that Gomi should be wiped off the face of the earth. But what is interesting in some of it is going through and seeing what people are frustrated by. I think we talked about trolls, and we talked about people giving negative feedback and your reaction to that, and a lot of you responded to me on that. I got a bunch of emails about it. This is in some ways a difficult question for me to answer because my life hasn't separated from reality or the peoples that I'm around in a significant way. I feel blessed to live the life I do, but I've lived in the same shitty apartment for 10 years. I don't make a huge amount of money. I don't make like fuck off money. I can do whatever I want. My life stays more, relatively grounded because it just hasn't changed that much. So I can't speak to being like, a lot of top influencers are making $500,000, $1 million a year. What does that do to you? I have no idea. I don't make anywhere in the stratosphere of that much money. So I don't know, but I try and surround myself with people who argue with me, who tell me I'm wrong. I try and listen to that. We had the conversation with Val on Drink with James a month or so ago. That came out of her, you know, that relationship and friendship I have with her came out of her calling me out on the internet for something I said and for me actually listening to it. So I think that like you need to continue to listen to your audience. Again, I think if you look at a Chrissy Teigen, she has more money than most people will ever get in their entire life. She still feels grounded. You know, she feels like a normal person. Why is that? She's self-deprecating. She doesn't take herself too seriously. She doesn't think her shit doesn't stink. She doesn't think she's like God's gift to the world. I think gratitude goes a long way, and being humble and saying like, a lot of this life is probably due to luck, which, you know, I think for most people, the lives they have are as influenced by privilege and luck as anything else. And so it's, you know, it's a bit of a stretch to, you know, to say that it was all hustle and it was all you. So where am I going with this? How do you stay grounded? I don't know. Don't be an asshole. Try and surround yourself with people who keep you grounded. Listen to your audience. Listen to, you know, try and continue to understand them. Ask them questions. More and more influencers are asking their audience, what do you want to see? What do you want to see more of? What do you want to see less of? I think that's always good. I think if you are fortunate enough to be incredibly wealthy and very successful, you also have to probably stop showing a lot of that. Think of celebrities, you know. Do they show their houses ever? Not really. Do they show their vacations? Not really. There comes a point where you reach a level of success where I think it is tacky to show it. You know, and it's like one of the reasons we work with NetJets on the campaigns is that NetJets gets no content from their owners because their owners don't share that they fly private because it's just a little like braggy and tacky. So I think like, again, if you're in that world where you kind of have exited into the 1%, I think you should probably start scaling back what you show, because I just don't think it's helpful. Again, look at a Chrissy Teigen, look at a Jennifer Lawrence. Are they posting about their house? Are they posting about, you know, the $30,000 couch they bought? Probably not, because they don't need to like throw it in your face. You know they're rich, they know they're rich. What else do you have to prove? I don't know. But listen, if I ever achieve generational wealth, I will answer this question again and tell you how to stay grounded, because I'm certainly not there yet. Any other questions? Look, that is it. I have a flight to catch. I will see you on the other side. Cheers.